Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Public Health Network Cymru Conference. My name's Sarah Crawley. You can see my mugshot. Well, you could see my mugshot up there. You now can't. Alison's playing around with it. I'm delighted to welcome you here today to the Public Health Network Conference. I'm very pleased, actually, to be invited to chair the event as well. Before I start, I need to share some housekeeping with you all. So, mobile phones, switch to silent or off, preferably, unless you need to take an urgent call, and then silent and wander out the back of the room for us. Toilets through the doors there on the left-hand side. In terms of tea and coffee, we've got tea and coffee break at 11:15, and that'll be back out where you came in and on the right-hand side. Lunch will also be out there. We're not due to have a fire drill, so if we do have a fire drill or a fire test, or the fire alarm does go off, we've got big fire exit doors just on the right-hand side there to your left. If you go out down the side of the building, and apparently there's some flagpoles in the car park. I completely missed them when I came in, so my observation skills are pretty poor, but apparently there are some flagpoles. We congregate by the flagpoles. And then we should have the checklist. Everybody should have signed in and got their badge. Okay, we've got a jam-packed agenda. You've got delegate packs, which include the programme, biogs, an evaluation form. We all love an evaluation form. So get your pens at the ready towards the end. Give us a good score. I also understand that there's link material for the ACEs in there, and that sets out joining instructions for today. And you can visit the Public Health Network website as well, and there's a stand out there that you can visit in your lunch hour. Wi-Fi is available, because we're all technology savvy, aren't we? So Wi-Fi, it's on ANC Conference, and the password is Sackville. So it's the name of the road here. So you should be able to remember that. Because I tweet, and we all should be tweeting, because it's how we seem to communicate with each other now in 150 characters and less. So Twitter, we're going to be hashtagging ACEIS 2017. So capital A, capital C, capital E, small s, 2017. So if you want a hashtag, you want to get us out there, which we'd be really grateful for, tweet away and hashtag us on that. We will be filming throughout, so if you don't want to be filmed, and you don't want to be on a live feed, and you don't want to be all over the internet, Justin over there in the blue shirt with the camera, you just have to tell him, and he'll try and avoid you. You might have to duck, you might have to walk out the way, but he will try and avoid you. So if you don't want to be on any of the filming, speak to Justin. If you do like being on film, and you want to give us some comments, some suggestions, ask us some questions, we've got that going on today as well. So you can come by and you can say, I really would like to make this suggestion, or I'd really like to make this comment. If you want to do that on Twitter, do it on that Twitter feed as well. Okay, I think that's the housekeeping. Don't think I've forgotten anything. So why are we here today? We're here today because of adverse childhood experiences, and they're increasing in international concern. There's a growing body of evidence that our experiences during childhood can affect our well-being outcomes throughout our life course. So this evidence tells us that children who experience stressful childhoods because of traumatic experiences or abuse are more likely to experience poor social, economic, and health outcomes in adulthood, which in turn may impact on their capacity to provide a positive childhood for their own children when they become parents. In truth, those of us who work with vulnerable children, as I do, and their families, we've known about this for a long time. However, we've never adequately addressed it. Much of our efforts have been focused on building parental capacity and safety planning, without us ever really addressing the reasons why some parents struggle to cope. They struggle to cope with their own poor well-being and to secure greater stability for them and their children. So much of my professional career has been directed at planning services for people who need support to achieve that stability and secure good well-being outcomes. However, in many cases, what we've been doing is treating the symptoms without getting to those root causes. Those root causes of that poor well-being, of the risks and behaviours that accompany these. That's why it was so exciting for me to be invited by Public Health Wales to this conference today, but also to see the published report on the Welsh Adverse Childhood Experiences Study in 2015. And it set out their commitment that I know is still incredibly strong and will be talked about today around the ACES Hub to lead the collaboration and improve early life experiences for the children and young people of Wales. So I joined Barnardo's Cymru as director last year, and it was clear to me from the start that ACES-informed approaches provide a framework through which we can communicate much of the innovative practice already developing within my organisation. Our corporate strategy has 3 areas of work. I'm just going to give you a few quick examples of some of these. So we aim to deliver work that supports stronger families and better outcomes for more children and young people. We've actually got a commitment to deliver better outcomes for more children throughout our strategy, and we're aiming over the next 10 years to increase that number in Wales of children by 25%. That's incredibly ambitious. That's, for us, over 2,000 more children and young people that we will be working with as an organisation. So over the past 2 years, we've invested in a project being piloted in Newport and Caerphilly, led by Professor Gordon Harold, which robustly considers the impact of parental conflict and domestic abuse on individual children. This, in turn, informs decisions on effective interventions to support safety and well-being of both parents and their children. At the same time, we've worked with partners to establish a service and support offer to children affected by parental imprisonment and their families in Wales. Directly addressing the trauma of parental imprisonment and children working to ensure they have their families and they can achieve those better well-being outcomes. Our focus has been on emotional health and well-being practice, led by our CADARN service in Cardiff, and includes work which recognises and acknowledges and responds to the trauma young people have as a result of bereavement. What I've found is that children in prison often actually, or children of parents in prison, often actually experience factors and features of bereavement and loss, because their parent disappears one day. And sometimes they don't know where they've gone. Sometimes they've told, Daddy's away working. And actually, they truly don't understand often what's going on for their father. So we've seen those impacts on those children. The loss that they experience, the fear they experience, the shame. And what we've been doing is we've been working with parents and families in schools to say that it isn't a subject we shouldn't talk about, and actually we should support those children. So we're also committed to securing safer childhoods for more children and young people. Our Better Futures service supports children and young people who've experienced child sex abuse, child sexual exploitation, and sexually harmful behaviour. The service has already developed a model of trauma-informed practice, working with experts in the field in the recognition of the need to move beyond managing the presenting behaviour and to directly addressing the psychological impact of trauma and abuse, to improve their opportunities for both recovery and to be able to move on with a safe, secure and positive life. We're also committed to securing positive futures for more children and young people. Our Leaving Care services identified some time ago that there is a cohort of young people that we support that have a complex array of additional needs and particularly struggle to enjoy good well-being and reach their potential. I don't know whether some of you saw recently, suicide figures are much higher in post-looked after children. So that's just one of the many factors around their emotional health and well-being which are carried through from early trauma. So we examined this issue in some detail with young people themselves, and our staff had identified a range of emotional well-being difficulties related in many cases to those early traumatic experiences. We've started to address this through training for staff on attachment disorder and the impact of trauma. And this work is part of our wider practice offer that we need to meet the needs of those children and young people. So it's clear that when we identify the impact of ACEs on children and young people and their families we work with, that our practice is evolving and needs to continue to evolve to respond. However, our direct involvement as part of Public Health Wales led the ACES collaborative work to begin when our experience as providers of CAPI, children affected by parental imprisonment, in the community and our prison service at HMP Park led to us conducting a feasibility study for Public Health Wales on the potential for ACES assessments with adults in the criminal justice system. So we're currently undertaking a consultation with parents in contact with specialist third sector organisations to inform the ACES approach. And our work will go forward with Public Health Wales led First 1000 Days collaboration programme as well. Gosh, that's a bit of a mouthful. So we're one of the partner organisations in this project led by Public Health Wales and South Wales Police, where we're developing and delivering training and consultancy to support ACE-informed practice across all sectors. It is part of our early intervention and prevention offer. So at the heart of all this work is the need for ACE-informed early intervention and prevention support from all services that come into contact with children, young people and families who may be affected by ACEs. I believe that the evidence is overwhelming and that it is time for us to work together to contribute to better health and well-being outcomes for some of our most vulnerable families and to give every child in Wales the best start in life. Just to give you a quick example, we've been looking at our young carer population. We have 4 services in Barnardo's across Wales. We think 70% of those young carers have 4 or more ACEs. So already they're in jeopardy and their outcomes are in jeopardy just from being young carers, their life chances. And when you put an ACEs lens on it, it looks like a much worse picture. So that's why it's so good to see such a well-attended conference here today. And I'm pleased now to introduce our first presenter in a strong programme, which I hope will help support us in working together, learning together, and achieving real change around ACEs.
So, bore da, croeso pawb. Lovely to see so many of you here today. A fantastic turnout. ACEs, as Sarah said, I think we need to think about what it means for us, what it means for us on a daily basis, what it means for us in terms of our services, what's our understanding about it. So today I'm going to provide with some information to help you think about that, think about where we are today and what's coming next. Excellent. That's up and working. Fab. So, what brings us here, I think, builds on a momentum that started last year with the publication of some research by Public Health Wales, which Sarah touched upon. What's been really interesting, I think, from my perspective, is the amount of momentum that has gained, not just across health, but much wider across many, many sectors. So housing sector, education, police, fire service. For me, it's something which seems to have touched so many organisations in a way that is quite unusual and very rare to see. And I think for me, the reason for that is because of the way it, nobody seems to argue with what it says, what the research says. Some might say, well, you know, this is nothing new. We knew this already. Adversity's been around for a long time. Yes, it has. But we haven't had the discussion in the way that we've started to have the discussion over the last 6 months or so. And to me, I think that's something we really need to work with. We've also got the opportunity of some of the legislative drivers that have come along, where we're starting to have many more conversations around prevention, around early intervention, about the future, about sustainability. And for me, what we're talking about here just fits square and centre in the middle of that. And when we start to think of the drive for us all to work in a much more collaborative way and in a much more involving way, this really gives us something that we can hold on to, where we're able to do that and also make a difference to the people living in Wales and to the things that we do. Up here is just a snapshot of the research that was published last year, and I just wondered if we could have a quick show of hands of people that have maybe read the research or are aware of the research. Fab, loads of you, that's brilliant. So hopefully you will sort of get where I'm coming from. I'm going to give you a little whistle-stop tour. It's great that you've read it. So it's going to be ACEs in a nutshell, just as a refresher to help you think about some of the questions that we're going to pose to you today. Once I've done that, I'll tell you a bit about my work in the hub. I've just started. At the moment, I am the hub, and I've got Leanne just working with me from last week, who's trying to help keep me on track. There's going to be a few more of us, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. What are ACEs? I think Sarah summed that up for us in a nutshell. And just a reminder that, and I think this is one of the things where people say, well, this isn't new. What is new is this is data for the first time for Wales. It's looked at 9 of the adverse childhood experiences experienced by under 18s. These are stressful experiences in a person's life. They're things that may have impacted a child individually, or they could be environmental factors. So the situation in which they grew up, where they may have lived in a household where there's been parental separation, quite common. A fifth of children had at the time of the survey. Domestic violence, quite prevalent. So a lot of different things that are in the environment when children are growing up. In terms of prevalence, hopefully this won't be new to you. ACEs are really common. Sarah touched upon that in her opening speech. Some more common for some than others, but actually half of us nearly have experienced at least one of those 9 adversities that I mentioned just now. 14% of us have suffered 4 or more of those harms throughout our life. And think about how that might manifest itself as people are growing up. Some of you may have seen this before. It's an animation which brings to life, really, some of the things that I've just described.
My parents don't understand. All the drinking and fighting means I'm scared. I'd like a cuddle, perhaps a bedtime story, but mostly I'd like them to stop shouting at me, and sometimes they hit me. Feeling scared every day and not feeling loved or wanted will change me for the rest of my life. Later, I'll have problems with school, problems with alcohol, and I'll get in trouble with the police. What's happening to me right now means I'm more likely to have serious health problems in middle age and die sooner than I should. Doctors say my life is full of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. But in my world, this means I see my dad hitting my mum. Dad's got a drinking problem, and mum's always crying, even with the tablet. I'm always being shouted at and hit. After the booze and fags, there's not a lot of money for toys or clothes, or even food. I'm getting used to being scared all the time, but now I'm just angry. Doctors say things are changing inside me. My brain isn't learning how to control my feelings properly. My body can't relax like those kids who don't have ACEs, so my body won't be able to repair itself properly when I get older, making it more likely I'll get cancer or heart disease as an adult. It hurts when my parents hit me, but the real damage is hidden, and that damage will be with me for life.
I think he summed it up very well there. And I think we need to think about, so what does that mean? What does that mean for us as ourselves, as individuals, but also for the things that we do and the services we provide and the organisations that we work for? When we think about those that have experienced 4 or more ACEs, some of these figures are quite stark. So 15 times more likely to have been a victim of violence over the last 12 months. 15 times more likely to have committed violence. 6 times more likely to have caused unintended teenage pregnancy. Those are things that we see quite frequently. Mental health, we talk a lot about mental health at the moment. 3 times more likely to have felt relaxed in the last 2 weeks, somebody that's experienced 4 or more ACEs. 6 times more likely to have never or really felt optimistic about the future. Just think about the consequences that might have on an individual and on their family, and what it means for them as they're going about their daily lives. 6 times more likely to have never or really felt useful. And of course, there's the impacts on health itself as a result of having multiple ACEs, the cumulative effect that can cause and the stress on the body. 3 times more likely to have attended A&E, and 2 times more likely to have visited a GP. And we all know how difficult it can be to get to see a GP sometimes, but also when we're delivering those services, what it can mean for us when we're repeatedly seeing the same people again. And this sort of demonstrates the impact over the course of a life. So you've just seen the young boy talking about what it's like for him growing up and the experience it's had, how that's impacted on his development physiologically, emotionally, what that then means when he goes to school, how he might turn into adopting some of those health-harming behaviours himself. And we saw just now 15 times more likely to commit crime, for example, and then the health implications and potentially early death. That sounds terrible. Doesn't necessarily have to be like that, so hold with it. This really, you might have seen this before, explains a little or attempts to explain what's really going on. So when a child is young, when it's starting to develop and it's experiencing a number of these threats or these adversities, the body responds in a way that we've responded for a long, long time. And we sort of enter what we commonly know as fight or flight. And our body is awash with chemicals and other things. For those that are experiencing and living in situations where they're experiencing regularly trauma and stress and adversity, their body never has chance to recover afterwards. So you've probably experienced yourselves, perhaps, situations where you get really nervous, where you can feel your heart going a bit, your hands go a bit sweaty. But then after that situation has gone away, you sort of calm back down, you're back to normal, you're relaxed a bit more. For those growing up, this doesn't happen, and so their body is always in that mode. And what happens is it overdevelops certain parts of the brain. Which is why quite often, and Sarah touched on the first 1,000 days, we hear a lot talking about that, and there's other pieces of work going on at the moment, which you might have heard of, that are looking at how do we make the first 1,000 days and what we do in that first 1,000 days better than it currently is, because we recognise the vital time period in somebody's life that the first 1,000 days is. Because actually, if we can make a bit of a difference in the first 1,000 days, we start to shift the picture that I showed you just now. Parents, absolutely critical. I think when we saw the 9 adversities at the start, the role of the parents you could see featuring in all of those adversities. But parents are critical in helping to give children the best start. And I think there's a real opportunity for us here to think about what do we do and what can we do to help work with parents, to help them think about what they're doing, support them, to help manage some of the things that we've discussed already today, and then help in that sense, give children the best start and maybe help break that cycle that we see quite often where history repeats itself in families. And I know you're talking to many services, they get to see that.
I drink and smoke. They say I'm out of control, but I'm not. It's just my way of coping with my aces. I've been in plenty of fights, but what's wrong with that? Kids' punches done it half as much as when my dad hits me. I beat up a kid last week at school because he looked at me weird. Who cares? I ended up with more time out of school. Learning's not for me anyway, and the teachers don't care any more than my parents. I don't like the way anyone looks at me except my girl. She's 16 and pregnant, just like my mum was with me.
So we start to see there what can happen without any early intervention and prevention. And these are the sorts of behaviours you start to see. When you look at why children are permanently excluded from school, these are the sorts of words that you hear. But is it his fault? Are we responding in the right way to that? Are we really taking on board some of what we're learning now and thinking about the approach that we take and how we can really help give people the best chance that they have in life? We're fast forwarding through the aging process here.
So this is where I've ended up. I've got diabetes and cancer is probably on the way. I know these kill you, but I couldn't do without them. I've never had a proper job and I've spent time inside. I hit my kids. I hit their mum too, until she left. So my kids have grown up with ACEs. And now my daughter had her first kid. She's 16. The course of my life was set in the wrong direction a long time ago. I know where I'm heading, and sadly I know where my kids are heading too.
So we're starting to see there some of the longer term implications that really have started in childhood, or even potentially before in some cases. So how can we make a difference to that? What happens if we try and reduce ACEs? We'll never completely prevent or eradicate them, but what can we do to make a difference? And how much of a difference potentially could we make? When you look at unintended teenage pregnancy, there's the potential to start reducing that. And when you look at the numbers here, by quite a bit, but even a small bit would make a difference. Violence perpetration could be reduced again by up to 60% potentially. Think about what that means for people, for individuals, for communities, and also for people like the emergency services, domestic abuse supporters, and others that are working to help people who've experienced the impacts of some of these things. I mentioned just now that these things, whilst they might happen, they don't have to last a lifetime. And just because people have experienced 4 more, 3, 2 ACEs, doesn't necessarily mean all of these things that you've just seen will happen. We can make a difference
This
to that.
doesn't have to happen. A little help in childhood makes a big difference to where life takes you. When I was a baby, the nurses noticed that my mum wasn't coping and helped her and explained how important my childhood is to the rest of my life. So, with a bit of help, she coped. The police came round after next door complained about the noise from Mum and Dad fighting. They asked how I was feeling. I told them I was scared all the time. Mum and Dad got help, the shouting got better and the hitting stopped. I even got some bedtime stories. I still had problems at school, but the teacher asked me about what was happening at home. I got help controlling my feelings. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. I'm now married with 2 children and I've got a job. Most of the time. I haven't repeated the same problems with my kids. We got help when being a parent got too much. Our children are ACE-free, and that means their kids stand a good chance of growing up ACE-free as well. Almost half the people in England and Wales experienced 1 ACE as a child, and 1 in 10 of us suffered 4 or more ACEs. If we stop ACEs, millions of children would not become smokers or binge drinkers, and levels of violence in adults would be cut in half. Fewer ACEs in childhood also means fewer adults developing diseases like cancer, heart disease, and diabetes in middle age. We all need to be ACE aware. Are you? Doctors, police, nurses, teachers, firefighters, and most importantly, parents. The more you know about ACEs, the more you can help stop children growing up with ACEs in their lives. And for those of you who have already suffered ACEs, the more you know, the more you can help yourself and others who have suffered ACEs cope.
So, just asking the questions, noticing, made all the difference to him, as we saw there, and continually doing that at the points at which people are hitting, particularly transitions in their lives, going to school, becoming parents, able to make quite a big difference. So we talk about protective factors, and this is what helps make some of that difference as well. They're important. Destiny isn't set from the outset, as I mentioned. There's a lifelong learning process about how we deal with crisis and change. And these are some of the factors which we know help make a difference. So particularly having that a stable adult relationship, particularly for children in life. Feeling like you own a bit more of your own destiny. And when we think about the impacts that I mentioned earlier about well-being, how that could make a real difference. So what are we going to do about it? What can we do about it? Looking ahead and thinking about, so what does this mean for us? Strategically, there's quite a few things on here, and we've started some of this already. That's why you're sitting here today, trying to bring this alive for people, and to give people the opportunity to start to think about, so what? Thinking about ACE-informed organisations and communities, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Thinking about how we take that universal approach, so it's not by chance, but actually recognising when a little bit more is needed. Steering investment towards the first 1,000 days. When you look at where the investment goes, it doesn't go there. Resilience and emotional literacy, and creating this idea of an ACE-informed society and thinking about doing it in a way which is really simple and straightforward to help people understand. Operationally, we've got stacks of experience of this in Wales, and part of what we need to think about is how do we maximise that? How do we spread that understanding, knowledge and experience we've gained? Sarah talked about quite a few examples earlier on, and there are plenty more. I've only just started in this job, and already I've had lots of conversations with people who are talking about the work that they are doing, whether it's in schools, whether it's in GP surgeries, whether it's in police stations, or with young offenders. There's quite a lot going on already. But this is an opportunity for us to do more, think about how we do it collectively. There's also an opportunity here, I think, to think about some of the things we don't always think about. And we were having a really interesting conversation earlier about planning and how when we're thinking about building new estates, of which we seem to be doing on and off now and again, but quite big ones, how are we thinking about the physical environment and what that means in terms of young children growing up, people that are living there, their well-being, their experience of some of the stuff here. It's really, really a lot for us to think about, and to think about how we can make a contribution. But you can keep it simple. So the ACE Support Hub, opportunity for us, it was born really out of the momentum that we spoke about last year. Another hub. Since I've started in this job, and it's only been a few weeks, I keep finding hubs everywhere. It's like frameworks. In my last job, I found loads of frameworks. Now I keep finding loads of hubs. But actually, I think it sums it up really well in terms of what we're going to do. And it started off as an idea under Cymru Well Wales, and I don't know if you've come across that, but it's a coming together of up to about 60 organisations, probably the organisations that you represent, and it thinks about what are the things that we could really usefully work on together and make a difference. First 1,000 days is one of those things. Working with those that are furthest from the job market, another. And then the idea around, well, what are we going to do about ACEs and the stuff that we've started learning and that we're hearing and that people keep talking about. And so the idea of the hub was born. And really, I think that's a reflection of the multi-sector interest I spoke about at the start. How this appeals to so many people because they can see their work and what they're doing within the frame of it. It's also got cross-ministerial support. 3 cabinet members are funding the hub. So I think, again, that's a reflection of a commitment across sectors. So the aim of the hub, ultimately, if we're being really ambitious in the grand scheme of things, is to reduce the number of ACEs across Wales. Clearly, that's a long-term ambition. But it's also to support those that have experienced ACEs in the past. Very practically, it's about creating ACE-informed organisations and an ACE-aware society. I think we need to be ambitious if we're going to make a difference, and we've really got to try. Can we really continue as we are? I know that's a question. It can sound quite trite sometimes, but actually, no, I don't think we can. So what do we tend to do? We're going to work with many sectors. So a lot of the sectors I've talked about already, like education, like health, like emergency services, local government, housing. There are a lot. We're going to look at what works. As I said, there's already quite a lot going on. At the moment, I'm gathering dots, which I'll talk about in a second. We're doing some trialing and testing. So there's quite a few projects already started. We're really interested to see what we can take from them, what we can learn, and ultimately create something which says, if you want to be ACE-informed, if you want to be an ACE-informed school, GP surgery, this is what it looks like. These are the key ingredients you need to think about. So it helps people think about the work in their context. So not a one-size-fits-all, but something that recognises what's going on in your area, your community, your service, and some tools to help you do that and help you think about it. We're also looking at it from the perspective of early intervention and prevention, early help, and building resilience. What do we know about all of those things in terms of what works, what helps make a difference? From talking to people already, one of the really simple things is just about asking the questions. I was at a conference recently, and it's not the first time I've heard it, and there were two young girls there, just about in their teens, and they'd been victims of domestic violence growing up. And it was really interesting. One of them said, nobody ever asked me. Nobody ever asked what was going on at home. So all of these things are playing out in her life, and some of those things that we saw earlier on one of the slides in terms of outward behaviours were showing up. Nobody asked her what would make a difference, and that would have made a big difference to her life growing up. And then the other girl said, well, I told my teacher what was going on at home, and she said, everybody argues. I think there's quite a lot to think about in that. So when we're looking at the lens of the sectors and through the lens of the different stages that I've touched on, we're also thinking about, well, how do we pull all of that together? Because it's all well and good, these things happening. We need to think about long-term system change. And we think there are some really important things to underpin that. Thinking about awareness, thinking about, is there specific training that's needed? So there's a project underway with the police at the moment who are really, really interested in this and what it can mean for them and for the people and communities that they work with. They're not used to dealing in a very different way with vulnerable people. They're not used to asking them about their trauma that they've experienced and thinking about how they might help them. In the project that we're working on at the moment, they often fill out some paperwork and it goes off. And then nothing happens, and they see the person again, and they fill out some paperwork, and it goes off, and they really want to break that cycle, and that's what they're looking to do, and there will be quite a lot that we can learn from that. So that awareness, that training, the communication and the sharing. So when we think about the hub, it is really about coordinating, learning, sharing, evidencing. So a lot of that coordinating and enabling work, and working with others to help join the dots. We also intend to work with families and communities to think about how we build their awareness and knowledge of some of this stuff in a way which is just really accessible, and how we feature that in our parenting offer that we've got. For me, it's important that we really build this into the things that we do. So it's how we do things, not that it becomes another thing to do, because we know when we've got it, things become another thing, another new shiny thing will come along in the future, and that's not what we want. We want to think about does what we do become sustainable? So how do we build in some of that trainers into core training so we don't have to think about it in the future? It just automatically happens. How do we think about how we build that into our processes and the way that we do stuff on a really practical level? How do we think about that it becomes the norm for parents to know this stuff, and so that it happens through generational cycles? The hub is only meant to be there for 3 years. So there's quite a lot to do in that 3 years. And actually, once that 3 years is ended, that's why we need sustainability. It's going to be a really small team. As I mentioned, it's just me. If anybody's interested, then let me know if you want to work with me and help. We're going to have a couple of people in the team. What's really interesting, though, is I've been approached by a number of organisations that have come up and said, we want to work with you. We can give you a day of a person a week to do X. Brilliant. let's do that. We're going to have, the idea is to also have some sector leads, so people that understand how their sector works and are able to act as a conduit and a connecting point between a lot of the learning and sharing that might be happening across Wales, sharing information as things develop over time, back and forth. So that's going to be, and also working with the other sector leads. So this is the thing about how do we join up across systems. I mentioned dots. This is the idea of, I don't know, I sort of like got a map in my head of all the stuff that's going on across Wales. So I'm gathering this picture of what we're already doing. There's no point starting stuff again. There's no point duplicating. We may as well learn from what we've already got. If you've got dots, tell me your dots. So if you're already doing stuff that you think really contributes to this agenda, then please let me know. That would be really good. We've got a questionnaire somewhere in your packs as well, which we'll come on to later in the day. So it's a way of helping, gathering and informing. It also asks you, how do you want to keep engaged in this conversation? How do you still want to know more? What is it that you want from the hub? I've sort of described to you what it is we're going to do. But actually, if that's not going to work for you, then please tell me. This needs to be involving. It needs to involve all of us. So think about what you want. If there's something, as we go through the day, you think, actually, if I want to do X, then I really need to know that, and I can help. Think about today as you're going through, how do you help create ACE-informed approaches? How do you help create an ACE-aware society? But also, what does it mean for you? And what do you need in your daily practice? And we've got somebody that's going to help us think about and do that as well. I can see my time is up. I'm going to be around all day, so if you want to come and speak to me, just come and grab me throughout the day. I think my contact details are on the next slide. Got a bit remiss with the technology at the end. So thank you very much for listening, or I hope that's given you an insight into the work of the Hub.